I divorced my cheating wife and made everything public. Now her life is ruined. Was I wrong? Let's start from the beginning. My wife Sarah and I had been married for 10 years, but something had changed. I had a feeling that something was wrong. She was always on her phone, texting and calling at all hours of the day and night. She started dressing differently, wearing makeup more often and dressing in clothes that I had never seen before. At first, I tried to ignore it, but one day I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to do some investigating. I started to pay closer attention to her behavior and noticed that she was being very secretive with her phone. She never let it out of her sight, and I started to wonder why. One night, while she was asleep, I decided to take a look. As I scrolled through her messages, my heart sank. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My wife was having an affair with a coworker. They had been seeing each other for months, and the messages were filled with love and affection for each other. I felt sick to my stomach. I had given my all to this woman, and she had betrayed me in the worst way possible. I didn't know what to do, but I knew that I couldn't just sit there and do nothing. It was time to confront her and get to the bottom of this. I couldn't believe what I had discovered. My wife, Sarah, was having an affair with a coworker. I felt like my whole world had been turned upside down. I knew I had to confront her about it. The next day, I waited for Sarah to come home from work. When she walked in the door, I asked her to sit down, and I told her what I had found. At first, she denied it, but I could tell that she was nervous. I showed her the messages, and she broke down in tears. I felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and confusion. I had never felt so betrayed in my life. Sarah tried to explain herself, saying that it was a mistake and that it had just happened. But I couldn't accept her excuses. I told her that I needed some time to think, and I left the house. I went for a long walk, trying to process everything that had just happened. It was a tough decision to make, but I knew that I couldn't stay with her any longer. I had to divorce her. When I returned home, I told Sarah that I wanted a divorce. She was devastated and begged me to reconsider, but it was too late. I had made up my mind. After confronting my wife about her affair, I knew that a divorce was inevitable. But there was one more thing I needed to do. I wanted to find out the truth about everything. I needed to know if there was more to the affair than just the two of them. I hired a private investigator to look into the matter. It was expensive, but I knew that it was worth it. I needed to have all the information to protect myself and my future. A few weeks later, the investigator came back with the results. It was worse than I had thought. Sarah and her coworker had been seeing each other for over a year, and it wasn't just an emotional affair. They had been sleeping together for most of that time. I was devastated. I couldn't believe that my wife had been lying to me for so long. I felt like my entire marriage had been a lie. I decided to confront her again. This time, I had all the evidence I needed. I showed her the photos and videos that the investigator had obtained, and she broke down in tears. She tried to apologize, but I didn't want to hear it. I was done with her lies. I filed for a divorce. After the divorce was final, I decided to make everything public. I wanted everyone to know the truth about what had happened. I posted the evidence on social media and shared it with our family and friends. When I shared the evidence of her infidelity online, it quickly went viral. People were shocked and outraged by what they saw. My ex-wife's reputation was destroyed in an instant, and I felt like justice had been served. After I made my ex-wife's affair public, her life was never the same. Her reputation was destroyed, and she was ostracized by many of our friends and family. I knew that it was not easy for her, but it was a consequence of her actions. Many people felt betrayed by Sarah, especially those who had known her for a long time. They saw her as a liar and a cheater, and they could no longer trust her. Some people even went out of their way to tell me that they were sorry for ever believing her lies. Sarah had to face the consequences of her actions. She lost her job, and many of her coworkers shunned her. It was hard to watch her go through all of this, but I knew that it was a necessary part of the healing process. She needed to learn that there were consequences to her actions, and she needed to take responsibility for what she had done. Even in public, Sarah was no longer the same person. She looked defeated and ashamed, and people could see that something had changed. It was hard to see her like that, but I knew that it was not my fault. It was a result of her own decisions. As time went on, Sarah's reputation continued to suffer. Even though it was hard to see her go through all of this, I knew that it was the right thing to do. She needed to understand that her actions had consequences, and she needed to learn from her mistakes. While I felt like I had done the right thing by making the affair public, I wasn't prepared for the backlash that followed. People accused me of being vindictive and of trying to ruin my ex-wife's life. It was hard to deal with the anger and resentment that came my way. I had hoped that people would see my ex-wife's behavior for what it was, but instead, I felt like I was being attacked for exposing the truth. Was I wrong? I started dating again, and while it was a bit daunting at first, I eventually found someone who I connected with on a deep level. We took things slowly, but eventually, we decided to take the next step and move in together. I heard from mutual friends that my ex-wife was struggling to rebuild her life. I don't take pleasure in her suffering, but I also didn't feel sorry for her. She had made her choices, and she had to face the consequences of those choices. We had no kids. But sometimes I wonder if I was wrong for doing this. What are your thoughts?